Okay, so today I'm just going to do a real quick video that's going to help you hopefully complete your peer review. So hopefully you are watching this on Tuesday because your peer review is going to be due by Thursday. So those of you that wait till the last minute and want to watch all your videos and do your quizzes and do all that kind of stuff on Sunday, you're going to be kind of past the date at this point because your peer review, remember, hopefully this is Monday night that I'm recording this, and if I sound kind of insane, it's because I drove 8 hours today from Mississippi back to Savannah, and I am very tired. But you know what? Sometimes you may be tired, but you still got to do your work. So hopefully by tonight everyone will turn their rough drafts into the discussion board here. Well, look for this particular class. There's a big 0 right here, and there should be some folks turning those papers in. I think I noticed there was one in the Dropbox, and it's like, well, you got to turn them in both places, so make sure you do that. So if you have not already turned in your rough draft to the peer review Dropbox and to the discussion board, which obviously no one in this class has, make sure that you do that as soon as possible. That is due by tonight, Monday. And if you're watching this Tuesday, then if you haven't done it yet, do it now. It should be a complete draft. It should have all of the things that you should have for your final draft. It should be the right length. It should have all the assignment requirements, all of that kind of stuff. So make sure that it is your works cited page, all of that kind of thing. All should be going on for you. So make sure that you're turning that in, and then you're going to complete your peer review. And since we are not in the classroom, so I got an email today that said the classroom was clean and ready to go. But since I had already said that we were not having class on Tuesday, I didn't want to confuse anybody and turn around and say, oh, actually we are. So I just kept Tuesday canceled. So we will be back in the classroom on Thursday. And we were scheduled to do peer review in class on Tuesday, but since we won't be in class, we'll just do it on discussion board. So make sure you do that because, as I mentioned down here at the bottom, that each one of these ends up being 5% of your final grade, and that works out to, when you're looking at it, that includes you turning it into the Dropbox, that includes you turning it in here on the discussion board, and making the comment on at least 2 classmates' posts. Some folks last time just turned in their paper and they didn't comment on anybody's, and that's not peer review. That's just you putting your paper on there, but you're not helping anybody. If you're not commenting, you're not giving them the information they need, the comments they need on their papers. So make sure that you are doing that, that you are turning it in, you're completing all of the peer reviews so you get full credit, because each one works out to be 5 points off your final grade. So say, for example, you don't do it at all, that's dropping your final grade by half a letter grade each time you don't do it, and there's 3 of them, so that's 15 points off if you don't do any of them. So make sure that you are doing this. It doesn't really take that long, but it's also really helpful. You want to help. You want your classmates to help you write a better paper, and you should be putting in that same time to help your classmates better their papers as well. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you, you obviously can read this yourself, but I'm going to kind of walk you through. I've made a few changes to my paper, my sample paper, and it's not we won't look at the entire paper. I just took a few paragraphs out of it that we can look at, and look at it and show you kind of the things that you should be looking for and how to make comments and things like that. So this is the discussion board here, and you'll see that you are supposed to post a copy of your rough draft, peer review draft. People get confused when I say peer review draft. It's your rough draft of your paper. To the discussion board, and you're going to respond to at least 2 classmates' papers. And I have a feeling that even though it says at least 2, most people would just do the 2, but at least do comment on at least 2 people's papers. Make sure, I think we had some issues last time where people weren't responding underneath the actual paper. They were kind of starting a new thread and putting their comments in there, and it got very confusing where people couldn't see the comments on their papers. So make sure that you are responding directly under the paper, that you are responding to the thread that it contains the paper that you are reading. so they don't get confusing and your comments aren't lost and it's hard to tell who's commenting on what paper and that kind of stuff. So make sure that you're responding, as it says here, to all the questions fully. We've had some issues where people go, your paper looks great, because you feel awkward criticizing someone, and I get that. It's hard sometimes to go, ooh, I don't really want to say that I think that something, maybe needs work, but that's the whole point of this process. It's constructive criticism. Remember, the point of this is to help you. So you're supposed to be giving constructive criticism to your classmates. What's constructive criticism? What's construction? You're building something up. So you're helping them build themselves up as a writer and helping them with their papers. So you're giving that constructive criticism, like this is, you're not going to help anybody by just patting them on the back and saying, oh, good job, and not pointing out the things that maybe need some work. That's not helping anybody. It's not helping your classmates to do that. So make sure that you're fully answering all these questions and not just going, awesome paper, because it makes it look like you're not really doing your part of peer review, which means you may not get credit for peer review. So you have to answer all these questions. So also I noticed I put on here, when choosing papers on which to comment, make sure that you choose papers that maybe have no or the fewest comments. Sometimes people will go in and they'll just all comment on the first paper they see. And so one person gets 3 or 4 different people commenting on theirs, and then other people get 0 people commenting. And that's not really, that's not cool. So make sure that everybody is getting equal attention and that you are commenting on papers that don't have any comments on them yet. And that's why it's important to turn in your paper on time, because if you turn in your paper late, then no one's going to have time to comment on it because they've already commented on the other 2 papers that they've had to do. So that's why it's important to go ahead and get it in there so that you can get the comments and get the help that you need. So for peer review, you're going to comment on at least 2 classmates' papers answering the following. Do they have a clear introduction that presents their sources and a thesis that states how the sources compare, agree, disagree at the end of their intro paragraph? Does the paper stay focused on discussing what the sources say and how they compare to each other? Because remember, this is, sometimes people can kind of stray a little bit into answering their question, and that's not the point of this assignment. So if they do that, make sure you mark where they do that. Are all references to outside material, including any kind of quotes or paraphrases, followed by in-text citations? This will be on peer review, and people will peer review people's papers, and then they will turn them in, and they will still have 0 in-text citations, which is considered plagiarism. And if I go back and look at peer review and I see that no one answered this question and that person turned in their paper with no in-text citation. Now, if you can comment on a person's paper and tell them, hey, you need to add these in-text citations, but and that doesn't mean that they will do it. But if you don't even make the effort to comment on it and say, hey, you need to add these in here, then that's an issue for both of you there. So make sure that you're doing that. So mark anywhere that those are missing. It's very important to have those in-text citations for any outside material, because that's going to be considered plagiarism, which could bring you a 0 on that paper. Does the paper meet the assignment criteria? So does it have all the information that's asked for on the assignment sheet? Is it the right page length, word count, all that kind of thing, all that information? Are they answering that research question? They shouldn't be. Does it have an academic tone? How can that be improved? And then 2 things that you think are good about the paper, being as specific as possible, and 2 things you still have questions about. Now, again, this is the one where people have issues where it's like they don't want to answer that question. And that's the whole point of this, is if you have problems, if you have something you have questions about, then tell that person that. Now, I've kind of changed up I've left my intro, a couple of middle paragraphs, in the conclusion. So we're not going to look at the entire paper because y'all probably don't want to sit through that whole thing. Now, I don't know how you guys do it. I feel like y'all just kind of make comments at the end. This is the way that I'm going to do it, because this is how I don't do this for your first 2 papers, but once I am grading your research paper, this is how I'm going to do it. So you can see all of my comments. And it makes it a little easier for you to figure out exactly what I'm talking about, because you are going to have to revise those research papers for your final portfolio. And so I want you to make sure that you get all the comments on there. So if you go to review and then tracking under on Word and turn track changes on, then that will allow you to start writing on the actual paper. So it'll allow you to make comments and things like that. So, let's start with this paper here. Depictions of unhealthy dramatic teen relationships can lead to teen interpersonal violence in the real world. Okay, so we know what topic we're talking about. Even though young adult media entertainment abounds, there is relatively little research on the correlation between mass media interpersonal violence and unhealthy real-life relationships. Okay, still on topic here. Now we get the introduction of the different articles. So in one article, the writer examines the effects of sex-centered comedy films on teen sexual attitudes and behaviors, while another article looks at how viewing relational aggression on television can lead to actual violence in teen relationships. A third source discusses the effects of nonviolent, female subservient depictions in rap videos on African American teens' attitudes toward dating violence. Now, if you are helping this person with their the things that they're supposed to be doing according to the assignment sheet, they have done that so far. They've got an introduction that introduces the sources, because remember that was on the assignment sheet, and it kind of gives you an idea about what the topic is. So let's see about this. This is the last paper, last sentence of this intro, so this should be the thesis. Dating violence is a really important topic, and there should be a lot of sources about it, but there really isn't. Okay, so what was that thesis supposed to be? It was supposed to talk about how the sources compare and contrast. Does that really do that? No, not really. So what you can do is, this is the way I like to do it, is you just do things like this where it will, let's make sure that you can kind of see this. This thesis, that's not how you spell that, thesis does not go along with what the assignment sheet asks. Now, you don't have to fix it for them. Just point it out. That's not what this is, the whole point is this thesis statement is supposed to say how they compare and contrast. That's not what this thesis does. So you say, hey, the thesis is not doing what the assignment sheet says. You don't have to say, well, it should be this or you should do this, Just point it out and say, okay, this is where we got an issue. And that's all you got to do. It's up to them to fix it. If you want to help them, give them a suggestion, you're absolutely free to do that. But you don't have to. All right. So then this is one of the particular paragraphs that I wrote about what one of the sources says. So the article, Media Depictions of Physical and Relational Aggression, Connections with Aggression in Young Adults' Romantic Relationships by Sarah M. Coyne et al., discusses the correlation between viewing relational violence on television and the potential for dating violence in relationships. The writers study a group of young people and their television viewing habits, the rate of violence in the shows they watch, and the amount of violence the subjects admit to in relationships. Okay, so we got an introduction. We know what the name of the, maybe if there was no article title, like if it just said the article by blah blah blah, you may want to put. Well, maybe you could say like, put a title here, something. You can make a comment over there like that. You can also, if, say, for example, you thought maybe that there needs to be a comma there, but if it didn't, when you delete things, it shows up, or when you type things in, it will show up there as well. So that's a kind of fun thing about track changes, where they can see if you type different things in there as well, if you've never used it. The article argues that there is some connection between viewing violence on television and performing violence in relationships, but due to the fact this is an early small study on the subject, they do not find a high rate of violence in the subjects they study. Okay, so what have I done here? I have told direct information from this article, right? So it's telling me what you should be telling us, what the articles, gives a kind of general summary and tell us what the argument is. So I do that. But what am I missing? If I'm quoting or giving a paraphrase from this article, then there should be a citation here. So you can just type that in, or you can point that out. Hey, in paragraph blah, blah, blah. That's what makes it easier than if you're writing a paragraph about what answering the questions. It makes it a little easier if you do it this way, so you don't have to try to explain exactly where it is that they're missing. So that's what makes it a little bit more interesting with track changes. Teen dating violence is definitely influenced by all the bad TV shows that like to have drama in all the relationships. Okay. Is that really having to do with anything with this article? Not particularly, and this almost is kind of sounding like it's answering the question. So you could make a comment that this is answering your question. That's not how you spell it, but you know what I mean. Make that comment there. Maybe that's not something that needs to be there. Maybe that's something they can use in their research paper. All right, next one. 3 sources agree that there is some connection between mass media relational violence and real life relational teen violence. All right, so that's what, we got to cover that kind of stuff. Risky Business proves that a direct correlation between sexual and dating behaviors in teen sex comedies and real life attitudes about dating and sex with their viewers. One study mentioned in the article states that blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read all for you, but it states these things. And then, wait, what? What are we missing right here? We have a direct quote on top of some little paraphrase right here. Then there's nothing there because the next sentence, the article, media depictions, it goes on to the next article. So we've finished talking about the first one. We need to have that citation there. So mark that for them. As you notice, the citation should be within that sentence too. The period should come after your parenthetical citation. The article, that one, finds connection between the viewing violence and enacting violence in relationships for both men and women, but found exposure led to specifically physical violence, more commonly in men. The writers believe that we've got all these things. I got a quote. And then here, this writer happened to remember to put the citation in there, so you don't really have to say anything there. The third article reports that it does these things, and there's a quotation there with your citation, so you don't have to use that. You don't have to point that out. They've got that. Missing one, make sure you point that out. All of these sources prove that TV is important in causing teen dating violence, and teens should be careful about what they watch on TV. Does it really prove this yet? Are we talking about proving our answer there? Not yet. So that's something that's more answering the question. So point that out. Types of media discussed in each source are different, but they show a connection to the changes in attitudes. See, this is focused on the source versus this is answering the question. You see how it's taking it a step further. This is something that you should have in your research paper, that you're summing up what the sources say in the sense that it's proving your argument, versus you're not doing that yet. All you're doing is just saying, hey, they show a connection. All the media is discussed, but they all talk about the connection. This is taking it a step further, so this is answering the question. You don't need to do that. Now, these are just little pieces of that. All right, so pretend you've done that on all the rest of the paragraphs, and now we're down to the conclusion. The 3 sources here all say media can real-life dating violence. So that makes, and I actually tried to type that as a real sentence last night when I was working on this. So the 3 sources here all say media can real-life dating violence. Okay, that doesn't make sense. So check this sentence. Like, literally, you can just say, like, I don't know what you're trying to say. Just check this sentence right here. Also, what is the first sentence of your conclusion supposed to do? It is supposed to reiterate your thesis, right? In different words. Well, we go back up here. This thesis didn't even have anything to do with the sources. So make sure that you kind of point out, like, hey, check this sentence. Make it restate the thesis you write. Because you have to rewrite that thesis. While teen dating violence and young people's exposure to mass media is a growing concern, there are not a lot of sources that examine how behavior in media affects the level of interpersonal relationship violence with teens. Further research is needed to discover a stronger answer to the question if there is a direct connection between mass media consumption and teen dating violence. Okay, so to me, and this is literally the way I ended the paper when I wrote it, and I mentioned this in one of the other videos, that if I were revising, this feels like it just sort of chops off. There's not really an end to it. So if I were revising, if this was somebody else's paper and I was making a comment, I would put, like, add a call to action or something else to better sum up the paper. So it feels like it needs another sentence there. And so make them, let them know, hey, I need it, you probably should use another sentence there. And so this is, as you're going through, think about these things. If these answer this. Now, don't stop there. Take a little gander at their works cited page, because look at what I did to my works cited page. Does this what it's supposed to look like? No, it's not. So, and some of y'all, your works cited page that you turned in for, to D2L the other day was just a list of links. That's not a works cited page. Make sure that you're formatting things properly. So you can make a comment if things aren't formatted. Format for MLA. Make some sort of comment on there. Now, normally when I actually grade your paper, what I'm going to do is once I get to the end, then I will give you I'll just go, this paper looks pretty good, but like this is what I'm going to do to give you kind of like those, the paragraph of comments that I give you on D2L and the comments. Now, what I'm going to, on your actual research paper, I'm going to put it on the paper. So you'll scroll through and you'll see the comments and stuff off to the side, and anything, like if I've typed something in, if I've corrected spelling or done something like that. And you notice I didn't pay any attention to spelling in this while I was going through here, because that's not what the main focus of peer review is. It's not necessarily only about looking at spelling and periods and commas and, things like that. It's mostly about making sure that you're following the assignment and that you have all the things that you need in there, because I take off way more points if your thesis is wrong than if you misspelled violence here, or something like that. And technically, in academic writing, you shouldn't have like contractions and things like that, but just pointing out this contraction, you can do that for that person, but I'm not going to take many points off for that as I would if this was actually their thesis in their paper, because that doesn't fulfill the assignment. So once I get to the end of your research paper, I'll give you those comments like I do in D2L, where it's like, it looks like that you have an issue with this looks good, you need to still work on this, that kind of thing. And so you can do that too. If you want to use track changes, to me, this is easier, because then you can you don't necessarily have to answer each, you don't have to go like 1, 2, 3, answering each question on here the way it is. But see, I've gone through and I've made comments about, like, is there a clear introduction? I've checked those things, and then I make the comments directly on the paper. If you want to just make a bulleted list and, maybe just type out, copy and paste this list and answer the question, that's, you can do that as well. But you don't, some of these are yes or no questions, but you can expand on that, especially if you say no, tell them why not, if it's not. Does it stay focused on discussing what the sources say? Well, tell them, hey, in paragraph 2, or when you're talking about the third source, it seems more like you're answering your question, things like that. Expand on it. Help them out. Give them the effort that you hope people will give you for your paper. And go through, obviously the one that I just looked at doesn't have the word count, page length, and that kind of stuff, because I chopped pieces out of it. But making sure that everything's there, marking their tone and that kind of stuff. You can make these, answer these questions and do all that kind of stuff. But definitely, like I said, make sure you're answering these questions, that you're listing 2 things that you like about the paper and 2 things that maybe you still have questions about. Like maybe the organization is off. Maybe there's, you think one paragraph would go better before another paragraph, or if they stray off topic, or if it doesn't seem like they, that the sources are really working for their question, or something like that. Point those things out. Because this, like I said, the whole point of this is for you to work together as a writing community to help each other, to build each other up and become better writers. And that's what the whole point of this class is, and that's what the whole point of peer review is. And a lot of times people will go, well, I don't know what changes to make because I can't find, nobody commented on my papers, or I can't find my comments. These are things that you are supposed to be doing about your own paper. So don't rely on someone else to make the changes that need to be made to your paper, or to point them out. This is the criteria you should also be looking over for your own paper as you revise it before you turn it in. So you should look at the comments other people make, but you should also be go through your paper and ask yourself, well, is there a clear introduction with the thesis that talks about the sources? Does it stay focused? Like, are there any missing in-text citations. You should be looking over this stuff yourself as well. So don't just rely on other people, because it is your paper ultimately. You're the one that's going to get that grade. So use this same criteria to look at your own paper before you turn in that final draft. So remember, this is going to be due by Thursday, so hopefully you are turning in your rough drafts as I speak right now at 7:19 on Monday. And then you will complete this by Thursday, hopefully earlier than that, because people should be working on your final draft before that. But remember, your final draft is due on Friday by 11:59. So if you have any questions, I will be in my office on Tuesday during my normal office hours and during class time. So feel free to text or call or drop by or email or whatever you need to do. If you have questions about your paper, if you have questions about comments that other people have made on your paper, ask that person. You can directly contact that person and say, hey, I don't understand your comment. If you're not sure if that comment is something that you need to apply, you feel free to ask me. Say, hey, they commented and said this. I'm not sure if it's something that I really need to work on. I can look at it and say yes or no. Or if you're just working on it, you're just confused, let me know. Send me your paper. I can help you. If you're feel like you're straying or something, and you're not getting it done the way it needs to be, then just let me know. But as of now, we will be in the classroom on Thursday, so I can answer some final questions then, and I will be introducing your research paper assignment on that day as well. So, as always, if you have any questions as you're working on your paper, and remember, there is that full sample paper that you can continue to look at. Make sure you're referring back to your assignment sheet and that sample paper as you're writing. If you have questions, and if you look at both of those things and you still have questions, ask me. That is what I'm here for. So just let me know, and I hope everyone has a good night.